and we are recording with Diana Chapman, who I just asked her a question. I said, "How do you want to feel today?" And what did you say?
I said, I hate that question.
Why do you hate that question?
Well, I want to let whatever is here be here. I don't want to, how do I want to feel sounds so controlling. And I want to just love it all and just let the feelings be here as they are and enjoy them.
So what's the word that codifies that experience of just being with what is?
How do I want to feel today? Welcoming.
So I think we ended up in the kind of, you want to be welcoming.
Perfect. Perfect.
I once had a friend he's so good with words. He's a screenwriter, and I was going into a sound ceremony with him, and I said, "What's your intention?" At the time, I was probably like 25, and I was new on intentions, so I thought intentions were the shiznittle bam. And I said, "What's your intention?" And he said, "No intention. I just want to listen to the wisdom that it has to offer me." And I always resonated with that. Of it was like the intention of no intention, but just listening. Like what's
Yeah.
there? Yeah,
Yeah. I really resonate with that. Yeah. It's like, I just want to get out of the way and dance with life through me.
yeah. Well, I just want to be fully present and really feel almost a responsibility to honor our time together. Because I'll say that at this particular moment of my life, I feel happier, more content, more alive. I am practically more successful than I've ever been professionally. And a lot of that correlates with the time over about the past year or so that we have started working together. And I am just so incredibly grateful for the role that you have played in my life, your wisdom, your teaching, your care, your love, your candor. You just talked about kicking someone's ass before we got on the call. And just the levity that you bring to what has been truly one of the most transformative years of my life. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for you and your work. And I'm excited to use this time to hopefully dive deep so that people can grasp in a really tactile way, like what is conscious leadership and where does it come from and why does it exist? So I'll just start by saying thank you.
You're welcome. I like exploring with you. And I remember you knocking on my door with so much clarity about exactly what you wanted and how committed you were. And yeah, I was like, oh, this guy's not messing around. And so it was easy to say yes.
One of my favorite things I remembered, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Bea, and I was about to play a pickleball game and we had a 30-minute intro call. And I remember getting off of the call and just thinking to myself, man, she is so supremely weird and playful and also just with it and razor sharp. And I think one of my favorite qualities in people is this idea of depth and levity, like the ability to take life really seriously and not at all, to just play. And I think that one of the things that I admire so much about you is your ability to work at the highest levels of leadership, but also your ability to play and to be silly and to have fun and to laugh in the midst of like seemingly the depths of heartbreak. It's spectacular and it makes working with you so powerful, but also for me so fun and something that I so deeply look forward to. And so I'm just curious, I started from this place of appreciation for the impact that you've had on my life. And I'd be curious if you were looking at conscious leadership, who would you say was one of the greatest mentors in your life that helped you to get to the place where you were capable of codifying this wisdom into the 15 commitments of conscious leadership? When you look back, who was one or perhaps a couple of like the real like catalytic mentors in your life that
Yeah.
put you on this path?
To three people come to mind. So Katie Hendricks, along with Gay Hendricks of the Hendricks Institute, had a massive impact on my life. I studied with them for 10 years, and a huge amount of the work that I do really has originated with their models. And particularly what I really liked about them that changed my life, one is embodiment. Like, get down in this body and feel, and get with the sensory experience of it and the emotional experience of it and let it have you. And two, play with it all. They were like the first people I studied with that were like, can we have some fun with all this instead of, heavy and serious? Oh God, I gotta fix myself. So, so that was really, really meaningful and changed everything about my life working with them. And I'd already been studying with a lot of people up until the point I came with them. But when I hung out with them, I was like, oh, this is a whole different kind of way of being with my humanity that I really enjoy. And then I would say the second one is Byron Katie. I have profoundly benefited from her holding what I would say is like holding polarity equally in the world. Like, I don't know, this side or this side, I don't know. My father was a lawyer, and every test I ever took said that I should be a lawyer. And I tried working in his law firm, and I was like, no, it's not for me. But I do have a really good lawyer mind, and I could argue to a jury all day long in any direction and win. And so my inner lawyer gets to still play it out here with clients of arguing like, you should be that way, you shouldn't be that way. He should be that way, he shouldn't be that way. She should be that, like, I don't know. And I'm getting more and more masterful of that practice in myself and with others. And the more I let go of needing to be right about anything, just the more available I am to what wants to happen.
I love that. And I'm curious for you, was there a moment in time where the 15 commitments as a framework first came into view, where you realized or you saw, the forest through the trees, you saw the holistic framework and the 15 commitments sequentially? I'm curious, what was the first moment where that really became clear that this needed to be birthed, it needed to exist?
Yeah, so the first couple of commitments Gay and Katie Hendricks actually wrote. They were their commitments. And so my work was a lot around that. I was working with YPO a lot back in the day. And they were always asking, I was teaching radical responsibility and being curious and feeling feelings. And they were like, where did we go to read about this? And I was like, I don't know. I would point to some books, but I knew for a business leader, they were looking for a particular kind of a book. And so I didn't really have a place to go. So I called up my friends, Jim Dethmer and Kaylee Klemp, and said, you guys are also working in YPO and you have a lot of the same training I do. Do you guys have any interest in gathering and seeing if we can put some structure to this? So we met in LA and hung out for a few days and literally wrote out the 15 commitments. And we were just looking at if we were going to articulate what's the difference between whether you're in trust or threat, and how would you know? What would be the things we would point to? And we knew 15 was a lot. And I was like, oh, that's overwhelming for people. But we put them in sequential order, the way that we thought that they mattered for practice and depth, honestly. These are the first ones to conquer, then it gets a little more interesting, and then it gets really deep. And so we wrote those 15 commitments, and we made a handout out of it, along with a bunch of other content we wrote that day, or those few days. And then I went to one of my mentors, Kate Ludeman, and I showed her all this stuff. And I said, what do you think of all this new stuff? And she goes, this one right here, 15 commitments, that's a book. Why don't you gotta write that book. So all of a sudden, boom, I saw the book in my mind's eye, and I saw the chapters and how they'd get written, and asked Kaylee and Jim if they wanted to write it, and away we went. And it's done really well.
Is there one testimonial, if you were to pick one out, that stands out to you of someone who read the book, some impact that it had? I'm always curious. I grew up with a mother who's a 12-time author, and I remember hearing these stories of just the book traveling to disparate parts of the earth and transforming companies or whatever that is. And so I'm curious, because the book has been out for how many years now?
10.
10
Yeah, 10
years.
years. Hmm.
So if you think back to like one message that you've received from a reader that really stands out to you, what's one of your all-time favorites?
Well, I think it wasn't so much about. I think it was recently. One of my clients was in Africa. He was with Martin Luther King Jr.'s family, who are involved in education, creating educational systems over there, and they were at a girls' school. And they were talking to some of these young girls, and they looked like they were maybe 12, 13, 14, right in there. And they were asking them, "What's your favorite part of school?" And several of them said, "Book club." And they said, "Oh, what book are you enjoying? Or what's one of your favorite books?" And they held up this very kind of, I don't know, makeshift copy of our book. I don't know who made it or where it came from. But, they were like, this book is our favorite book. And then he said he went to another classroom and somebody was giving a book talk about the book to the rest of the class. And it just touched my heart, like the impact of, you never know where these things go, but to think about these young women being empowered to really be in presence and take radical responsibility and create the lives they most want, that just, warms my heart. So I think that was the one that, was delighted me so much.
Yeah.
Partially because of the surprise of it, and so if you know me, I like impact. So I like making my way into places that, I wouldn't have maybe imagined.
Yeah. I had one that was fun recently and really transformed the advice I give to a lot of CEOs, but I went to facilitate a workshop for my friend Dylan's company, MindBloom. And so they're really on the leading edge of ketamine-assisted therapy, psychedelic-assisted therapy, and their like primary onboarding protocol for everyone on their team is that they have to read the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And so it's just, again, when I think about what it is that you could do to build an empowered culture of people taking responsibility, one of the simplest things is that before you join the team, just read this book. And I think that, again, like for it to start at the top of like, you must be willing to do this at an executive level first. But after that, to just have everyone coming in with this wisdom kind of as the foundation, I thought was so beautiful. And I advise so many CEOs now. It's like one of the simplest things I think you could do is just literally have everyone on the team read this, give them a new language to connect and evaluate everything that's coming up. And I think at this point, what I really want to do is just invite you to help us understand what is conscious leadership and what are the 15 commitments.
Okay. So conscious leadership, in my definition, our definition, is that conscious is, can I just be here now? And can I not out in the future of like, what's my next meeting and what I got to do, and not in the past of like, oh, that I got irritated by that last conversation, but can I just be here? So here I am with Andrew right here, right now. And can I be here now in a non-triggered, non-reactive state? Which isn't easy because this whole wiring system of this meat sack is constantly like, am I okay? Are we okay? Are we going to survive? And so can I learn to notice that, welcome that, and then relax that so I can just come back and say, it's okay. You don't have to be at threat. You can be in a state of trust and just learn. So conscious leadership, be here now, non-triggered, non-reactive. And then the 15 commitments are, how do you know if you're in trust versus threat? How do you know? Well, first one, if you're in trust, you're not blaming anybody, not yourself, not anybody else, and you're really taking radical responsibility for how you're co-creating things. Simple. If you're commitment to, you're being curious and letting go of holding things righteously. So it's just a map. I like making maps because I like maps for me. Like, what's it look like? So we just made a map of like, here's the differences that we can see. And so here comes the 15.
And you use that word reactive or reactivity. And it was a word that was not really in my lexicon. It wasn't something that I would think of just naturally before meeting you. And so how do you define what is reactivity?
Yeah, so I'll compare it to responding, right? I can respond to the moment. So let's just say you are frustrated with me and you say, Diana, I don't like that you did XYZ. So if I'm able to respond, I go, let me just drop in for a second and know there are a wide variety of ways I might be with you right here, right now. And all of these ways could be valuable. And so I'm just tuning into how does presence want to interact now? Versus reactivity is like, oh, no, don't be mad at me. I meant to be like, or fuck you, like, screw you. What do you think? You're so great. Or whatever other kind of compulsive behavior comes out. So reactivity is compulsive. It's often fast. It's like, don't worry, or fuck you, or whatever. But it doesn't have range of possibilities in the moment of how I want to be.
And so could you say a little bit about above the line and below the line as a mechanism to evaluate reactivity?
Yeah, so if I'm above the line, I've got some range here. Like, hold on. I want to just learn. I want to learn about, hey, what's going on for you? Tell me more about how you didn't like it. What can I learn from this? How is that about me? How is that about you? How is that about life? So I'm just really interested in learning. I want to make learning more important than trying to get it right. And I want to have some lightheartedness about this, even though I might also want to be with some pain. But can I go, oh, I'm doing the best I know how, and so are you. And hey, we're toddling around here in life. And can we hold that with some lightness? And even when we're dealing with, quote, serious things, you can still hold some lightness with some serious things. And can we just come back to like, it's all okay. Even in scary times, we're okay. And so below the line is more like, this is a problem with a capital P. This is serious. It's not funny. And this feels like a threat to my identity. And like, and you're probably the problem, or I'm the problem, or they're the problem. And there's something in, now we're going to get into victimhood, and we're going to feel like it's happening to me. And instead of from above the line in that state of trust, I recognize like, hey, wait a minute, I'm the creator. It's my movie. What do I need to do here to create something that feels okay in here?
Yeah. And one of the things that was so transformative for me about below the line was the kind of nuanced distinction that below the line is not necessarily like worse than above the line. It's that identifying our reactivity is the first step in transforming it into the conscious response. And so that simple mechanism of a line and looking at like, hey, am I experiencing tension, anxiety, like resistance? It's like, if so, simply articulating where I'm at, how I'm meeting life is the first step in shifting into a conscious response, which then the commitments kind of help us to get into. So that was something that was so powerful and that just enhanced my own awareness of where I'm operating from in such a beautiful way. And I think what might make sense and what I'd love to do is, you said that the 15 commitments happen in this sequence of like, some of them are more essential than others. And like some of them are just like speaking to more elevated states of consciousness, perhaps. And so I'd love if you could explain what taking full responsibility means to you.
Well, it just means, hey, I'm a designer of what's happening around me, whether I'm conscious of it or not, because sometimes I'm designing and I'm not even conscious of it. So my job is to take a look at, how am I creating the person over there who XYZ? What's my part in that? Now, it's not about blaming, and it's not about it's all about me. It's about what's my part. I'm always looking at what's my part in the current political situation. What's my part in homelessness here in my county? What's my part in my family system not being as fed as exquisitely as I would like? Like, I'm always just looking at how can I take some ownership for the results that are happening around me, and knowing I'm one of many stakeholders often. But even in myself, like, I was speaking last week, and I often can really scare myself before I go on stage. And in the past have like really freaked myself out. So I'm just like miserably terrified. So just even say like, how am I terrifying myself? Like, it's not happening to me. it's that there's some way I'm organizing myself that's creating this experience. And if I can articulate how I'm creating it, I can actually shift it if I want to.
Yeah. And because this is so fundamental, this mindset, I think like one of the single most powerful mindsets to adopt in life is this one. And so I'm curious, what gets in the way of people taking full responsibility, taking ownership?
I just get scared. We all just get scared. And we get scared because, there is a threat to my approval, my being valued, my being respected. Something's threatening that. So now I'm a little reactive here, and now I'm not available. Or I feel like there's a threat to control, somehow a threat to my control, and now I'm scared, I'm reactive, and I'm not available. Or there's a threat to my security. It feels like whether it's my financial security or my emotional security, my physical security, something feels like a threat. Now I'm not available. So as long as I'm in some kind of egoic mindset that there is a meaningful threat to me out there that's causing this one over here to get a little triggered, I just won't look and really take full radical responsibility. I want to defend. I want to be right about something. I want to, it just, as long as I want to be right, I won't learn.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat those again because they're incredibly powerful for identifying the source of our reactivity. But oftentimes when we are in a state of reactivity, it is because we perceive that our approval, security, or control is being threatened. And so just once again, to kind of work back on what is our state of reactivity? Where is it coming from? If we look at where do I think my sense of security, approval, control is being threatened, and then the later steps help us to evaluate that. And I'm curious if you could say more about kind of because this has been some of the most fun work that you and I did early on, was getting into role play of kind of the drama triangle. And again, just like one of the places where when I think of you and your silliness and being able to do really serious work of like being really fucking angry and then just laughing at myself a few minutes later, was because of your mastery of the drama triangle. And so I'm curious if you could say more about the archetypes of the villain, the victim, the hero.
Yeah, so this is from Stephen Cartman's drama triangle that he created. And the idea is most of us learned how to do relationship being in victimhood. So no problem. That's just really human. And there are 3 unique flavors of victimhood. The first one is the pure victim. And, Andrew, it's hard. I'm trying. I can't. You don't get it. I mean, and it's got this kind of like shoulders slumped and it's disempowered, right? And then another flavor of the drama triangle is the villain. He called it the persecutor. I like the villain because I like hero villain victims. Like all good movies need a hero villain victim. So the villain's job is to blame. And I was fine until you came along. This team was doing great until you started leading us. Or me, God, why don't I get my stuff together? I should be more successful or more buff or more whatever. Or them. I mean, we all know who they are that are messing this whole thing up for us. So villain is super addicting because you get a big hit of norepinephrine, cortisol, or adrenaline with that one. And then finally is the hero. He called it the reliever. But the hero puts the cape on. Dun, dun, dun. And the hero's job is to seek temporary relief. I will fix it, but temporarily. Just like, you feed a man a fish every night, but you don't actually teach him to fish for himself because heroes need a victim to fix. Because otherwise, what do you need me for if you don't need a hero around? So when I first got into this work, I realized I was a hero mainly in every relationship I had. It was a codependent thing I was doing. I needed you actually to kind of be cut off at your knees as a victim. So you need me and then you won't leave me. And when I woke up to it, I was just like, oh God, I love that part of me that was so scared that felt she had to be in this pattern. I also felt so brokenhearted for how I had needed to see everybody, particularly my husband, as less than. And I went and made amends to everybody in my life and recommitted to seeing everybody as equals and firing myself from being their temporary reliever over and over again.
And I'll just speak to one of my favorite practices with you. And I will always remember this call. And I just remember the word so vividly. And then what happens? And then what happens? And what Diana will help clients to do is to really identify when they're operating from one of these roles. So if I'm in the victim, like let's say like I'm dealing with financial scarcity, which was true as I was starting my coaching practice like 2 years ago. It's just like worried that things are going well and it's all going to break down. And she's like, okay, like look where you are right now. And she'll literally have you move your chair over to like step into the role of the victim or to stand up and like, all right, like if you're going to be there, like really fucking be there. Don't pretend you're not. Like, don't pretend you're not operating from that place. And so just go up and be a victim. Like if you wanted to worry about like your business collapsing, like what would you do? Teach the class on like how to make that happen. And just like, you know, that party that's just complaining and it's so hard, just like really like let that through completely. And then what you do, it's like, then I would express myself and then I'd hit this pause and it'd be quiet. And then the question comes up, and then what happens if all that's true? And it's just like, and what I started to realize is just the cyclical nature of reactivity, that any solution that comes from that place is just really going to create some reactivity in the future, that you can't find a solution from these places of reactivity. And so what was so fun about that was just to, you know, I always have this idea that so many of us say that we're experiencing emotions, but we're more present to the resistance to the emotion than the emotion itself. And so I love that idea of allowing the drama triangle to be the drama triangle and like really dramatizing it, which was so liberating to just feel fully. And so once you've identified when you're acting from one of these reactive archetypes, like what's the shift move? Like where do we go from there?
Yeah. So first of all, just to go, oh my God, this meat sack, because it's a meat sack that is wired to try to survive, is constantly looking out for threat. And the mechanisms in which it does it are kind of like it's not great at really knowing what's a threat and what's not. So you have to know that and go, all right, well, I thank God we have the system in place because it is trying to keep me alive. But I got to pay attention that it's going to react even when I don't need to. So I don't want to make that good or bad or right or wrong about me. It's just so damn human. And so when I see it, I just go, oh yeah, that's what's happening. And can I just accept, like really heartfully accept, yeah, I just got scared and reactive. I was just perceiving a threat to my approval. Okay. And today is Tuesday. And can you say it, literally say it, like with this same kind of relaxation, today is Tuesday and I got reactive. Because if you can't, you're not really yet accepting it. Maybe intellectually you are. But there's something else in the body that's like, yeah, you should be different, or whatever we do to ourselves, or at least I do to myself. So that accepting piece is so key because you cannot shift that which you cannot accept. And I actually think that's a big part of what the whole world is in right now, is we got a lot of shadow that we don't want to accept about ourselves. And so we're going to require the shadow to rise up around us and, you know, really make us look at it in the mirror. So I think acceptance work is key in this time. And then if I am, you know, hey, I'm just a human being, I got scared, no problem, then am I willing to shift? Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Doesn't mean anything about me. It just means today's Tuesday and I don't want to shift. Still not available yet for really being present. Something in the system says not yet. And I got to trust that and not make that a problem and learn like, oh, tell me more. Why does the system not want to shift yet? And maybe it's like, I don't know if I feel confident feeling my anger fully yet. Or I don't know if I am willing to let go of wanting to be right because it feels super, super threatening. If I weren't right, like, I mean, I have leaders go, God, Diana, if I weren't right, I'm scared I wouldn't run this company anymore. There is no way I'm going to drop my righteousness because that's the only way I know how to drive myself. I'm like, oh, of course, no problem. I get it. So if I am willing to shift, then great. What am I going to do to shift? And, you know, there's a whole bunch of different practices. And I like, you know, making sure people have really good, simple, practical things they can do to shift. So they feel very empowered to move themselves back into trust if they want to.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about what some of those are. What are some of your favorite tools to move into the shift and the response?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is, can I just be candid? Can I talk to somebody honestly about what's going on with me? I mean, there's such a lack of candor. Here's some stories I've been making up about me or you or this thing we're collaborating on. Or here's some feelings I haven't told you I felt, and let me be with them actually. Or, hey, I made up a story that you don't like me, and I've been holding that and kind of moving around you with wanting to be right about that. I just want to check out my story. Is that true? I mean, there's so much can be healed just through being open and vulnerable. So that's one. Just can you have a candid conversation? And we call it speaking unarguably. Like, what's unarguable? Like, my stomach is swirling. I feel scared and a little sad. And the thought that's just coming across my head is, I'm scared of your anger. Just that's what's unarguable over here.
Mm-hmm. I just want to pause on that for a second because, again, those words for me resonate so deeply with a lot of executives that I get to work with because they immediately understand the efficiency of that type of communication when you use the words unarguable. Because how often do we recycle the same conversations when we're locked in like hyperbolic criticism of someone else? But those words unarguable, again, it's that when we learn the pathway to challenge people directly and with facts, whether it's our perspective, our thoughts, our feelings, our needs, is that we spend so much less time cycling in defensiveness or the doom spiral. And so it really is incredibly efficient, but also just kinder.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one of my favorite, most radical things I ever learned was from Byron Katie. And she said, there is no anything that's ever happened that has ever caused you upset. Ever. That is a radical statement. And most people will go, bullshit, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. And I can argue how that's true. But I really go and look at, if I didn't interpret reality with a righteous story that caused me pain and suffering, I would just be able to just go, wow, this is the world. This is what's happening. This is what's happening here. This is what's happening there. And be able to stay deeply present. But it's my interpretation of reality that's the cause of all my suffering. And that's just been true for me. So I would say suffering, which is different than pain. Because I can feel like an ache of somebody leaving, and that's a pain. But then I'll suffer with, I'm alone now and I can't have what I want, which is a suffering. And so I really like helping people separate out what are the actual facts, what did the camera record, and what are your stories about those, and can you see that they're two different things, and can you start questioning your stories? And when we ask people, what are some of your favorite tools that the Conscious Leadership Group has shared with companies, that one is one of the most popular, is separating out fact and story. And it's very practical. And then the other one is teach the class. So you're complaining that you as a team did not make your first quarter earnings. Teach me a class. I don't want to make my first quarter earnings either. And I want to do it exactly like you did it. And they at first go like, well, we didn't do it. We didn't purposely say it. And I go, well, not purposely, but survey says you didn't make your first quarter earnings. Well, yeah, but it's the economy and blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, I got other companies who are making their first quarter earnings in this economy. So what if it's not that? Just for a minute, teach me a class. And that's so enlightening to go, oh. And then they start going, oh yeah, well, I noticed that blah, 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 and I didn't say anything. And then I overpromise because I didn't want you guys to be disappointed and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, we can start to see how we have a part to play in this. And the good thing about teach the class is now you just go do everything the opposite of what you wrote down, and you've got a great plan for how to go make your earnings next quarter.
Yeah. Hey, I want to double click real quick on the facts versus the story. And you talked again about being unarguable, but I'd be curious if you're putting yourself in the seat of a CEO, practically, how do you communicate to other people in a way that welcomes them into more objective communication, differentiating the facts versus the story. So people are coming into a meeting or you're going into annual review session with feedback. What is the mechanism that would allow someone to foster a culture with more objective, fact-based communication? How would you do that?
Well, I always say, one, we all got to agree on the game we're going to play.
Yeah.
So, are we all going to play the game where we're going to separate out facts and stories? Is that an agreement we're all going to have, that we're all going to play that game? And if so, then when we communicate with one another, let's agree that we'll say the facts are and my story is. Or one company of scientists said, the facts are and my hypothesis is. And so, and that becomes an agreement of how we communicate with each other. And when you
Yeah.
have a co-commitment on what's the game we're going to play and clear agreements about how we're going to play it, then it's easy to do. And so it is not uncommon for me to sit in with an executive team who would start to talk to each other and say, hey, the facts are, you're the CEO. Could be that simple. My story is that you're ineffective in clarifying prioritization on this team. Boom. Just simple. It's a story. I'm not right about my story. I could argue how you do clarify. I could argue that, I've got a should that you should clarify. I can argue why you shouldn't. So I'm not in a righteous stance. So I'm not in reactivity. I'm starting to separate it out and start to get with, I'm the creator of the story I want to be right about. And when I am really right about it, I upset myself and I judge you.
And I think there's a really subtle nuance in there that I'd love for you to talk more about. Is I love how your framework has more space for sharing of stories and thoughts, whereas something like nonviolent communication is more rigid in observations, feelings, needs, but it doesn't really make space for my story. And in my experience, I will oftentimes see kind of like the immature expression of this as I have a story that you are, but they're correctly contextualizing their story of someone, but also relating to it as though it's right. And so
Yeah.
how do you communicate to the person when you say, oh, they're saying the right thing, but they're not really owning it, and that it's their projection or story that's creating the reactivity or issue?
Well, first of all, I like that you point out we humans love to weaponize everything. So all of these tools can get weaponized by an ego. And so it really matters, like, slow down. The facts are, I always make people say, hold on, you didn't really say what are just the facts. The facts are, and make sure, because a lot of people add story into their facts, like adjectives, adverbs, measurements, comparisons are all still stories.
Yeah.
The facts are you were rude. Nope. The facts are you talked, you said words. My story is you were rude. So being able to just separate those out, and sometimes people need to go, the story I'm making up right now, like find the language that really helps you own, this is me over here making up a story, and so I can own it's my story, not the truth. But most people like to say their stories are truth. You should, I shouldn't, they should are all stories being told as facts.
What's the responsibility of the recipient of someone sharing their story? I have a story that you're not performing up to our standards. And
Well,
so the person who's receiving that, right? What is their responsibility to respond to the story versus to bring the other person back into relationship with the facts and objective reality?
So I suggest the following. First of all, thank you so much for coming to reveal versus conceal,
Yeah.
because that in of itself is an act of caring for this relationship, and I'm really grateful because that was courageous. Secondly, I'm interested in a feedback-rich environment, and I'm going to trust life. If life has you showing up, giving me that feedback, I just want to first go, how is what you're saying true? And I probably can argue how it's not true. It's great. I can argue, and I want people to argue why it's not true. But that's usually the default. Go argue for how is what you're saying true. I learned so much. And I find myself, I sometimes have to stretch because I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. But it's like, no, stretch, Diana. Just go look and see. And maybe it's not exactly true in this scene, but how is it true? Like, go see if you can own that and welcome that part of yourself. So then you say, okay, and then thank you for telling me about the story. And do you want support on questioning your story? Like, are you holding it tightly? And thanks for the feedback and anything else you need. So, but I'm interested in celebrating us revealing versus concealing, because when you conceal, you have to withhold, withdraw, and then start to project. And that's how so much drama comes in the world. So just the act of revealing versus concealing changes the game. And I love, always from above the line, I ask the question, how is your feedback true? And I lead forums where I have leaders come together and they give each other feedback. And part of our practice, it's like being in the dojo, stop. How is it true? They're like, no, deeper. How is it true? And I can't find any feedback anybody ever got that didn't have value somewhere.
And I think that if I were to speak from the person who's on the receiving end of that and the resistance that comes up to looking for how maybe I will oftentimes use the number. I'll say, can you see how 5% of it is true? And just like, maybe just look for like the little sliver. So it's not totally true, but it's like 5% of it true. And also I think that the fear, especially for people who are in like almost like a hierarchy of leaders versus like being an employee, think that acknowledging feedback that's hyperbolic or subjective, even acknowledging it will then be it will be used to manipulate them or to then establish kind of a reality that's not true. And so I'm curious, like, how would you speak to the people who might feel resistance to acknowledging feedback, looking for how it's true in a professional context, or even with their romantic partner who might be coming forward with like, I have a story that you are X, that you never Y. How do they navigate that fine line?
Well, I actually want a role model because I had this moment. I was teaching with Gay Hendricks in New York. We were sitting around with maybe 20 couples about 20 years ago. And it really wasn't going that well, the training. People weren't really opening up. And so this one couple started getting a little critical toward another couple. Maybe like one of the men was getting critical toward the other woman. And then they started to get more intense. And Gay pulls out his book and starts reading his book for a little bit. As they're starting to heat up and get, and the whole room starting to get agitated and everybody's starting to get upset about this. And I'm kind of looking around like, Gay, what are you doing here? So at some point, it all kind of escalated a bit and Gay puts his book away and goes, all right, time for a break. So I go up to Gay and I go, Gay, I got to tell you, like, this interaction just happened. I'm making up a story that you're aloof. And it was so great. Gay just in presence goes, well, Diana, what's true about me is I am aloof sometimes. It's true about me. Mm-hmm. And you could just see how much he was just like opening and welcoming his aloof side. And he goes, but in this case today, I don't think I was aloof. And so he was taking the feedback in of, I see how it's true. And then he tried it on. And in this case, he's like, no. And then all of a sudden, poof, I got present. And I was like, oh my God, you did that on purpose because the room needed to be heated up to start to like catalyze some transformation. It was just staying flat.
Yeah.
And he's like, he smiled like, thanks for seeing me. And I was like that level of openness and curiosity in him was a field in which poof, I got my own awareness and could see so clearly. And then I was just like, God, I'm bowing. That was brilliant. And I couldn't have seen it if I wanted to stay righteous or he wanted to stay defensive. So that's the practice. And it takes time. It takes time. And it's a lot around just letting it be okay again to just be a mess sometimes. And like, yeah, I'm a dumbhead sometimes. And can I just love that about me?
And you talked about being right. And I think that if I look at another one of the distinctions that's been so helpful in your work, is that frame of curiosity, that true curiosity can't happen in the context of right and wrong. And I'd
Right.
love if you could just elaborate a little more of what is true curiosity.
Well, you'll see it in a lot of I think a lot of the some of the most aware amongst us on the planet. They often end with a question mark, like, should it be this way? Who am I? You know, Trump should do this. Trump
Hmm.
shouldn't do this. It's all a lot of like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Let's find out. Let's learn. So there's just that willingness to question everything that maximizes evolution.
And could you say more about the right wrong aspect of that and like how people approach conversations with that mindset and how it gets in the way?
Well, I like to use this metaphor that when people are really caught in right wrong thinking, it's like looking up in the sky at night in a very lit up city, and you go, yeah, there's like, 30, 40 stars up there, that I can really see. And you can get convinced that that's all there is. And why? Because I'm right. I'm looking up and that's the way it is. But when you're in this place of what if I don't know? It's like being out in the country with no lights anywhere, looking up and going, oh my God. They said there was possibilities, but I didn't see all these stars before. And that's one of the things people say they like the most about living more in a state of trust is like so many more things I get to see that I had no idea were there in that level of curiosity. So, like ways to solve the challenges we're in our company and in my relationships and with my kid, and everything is like, wow, so much more possibility of how things could be handled.
Yeah. And what I'd love to explore, because this frame of right or wrong, or, I think when you talk about like, are we under threat? Is security, approval, control being attacked? Has to do with one of the fundamental lessons that I've learned from you. And I believe you created this modality, but the idea of context coaching. And at one point early in our relationship, you said, everyone wants to focus on content, which is what has happened, what's been said, but that our context of the situation is typically far more impactful. And my understanding of context is really how we are relating to the situation or what is happening. What are the thoughts and feelings? And so I'd love to hear when you think of context coaching and in your frame, like what does that mean? What is our context and how does it impact our ability to respond consciously to conversations, people, situations?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I did not create context coaching. I did learn that from Gay and Katie. And they were the first ones that ever showed me that, hey, don't get so caught in content. It's not the most valuable part of transformation. Context is it trust or is it threat? Are you open or are you closed? Are you in learning and some playfulness or are you like defensive and serious? That context, just that simple line, is going to determine whether your issues will recycle or not. It's just that simple. If you want to get off the ground and really get out into that stratosphere where there's a new possibility, you've then got to be in the context of trust. Easier said than done. But that's the practice is you're stuck. So I work with a ton of leaders who are making meaningful decisions that have huge impact on all kinds of things. And I know that the answer lives in them, but they're not available to it because they're in some kind of contraction, some kind of reactivity. So my job is to go, hey, do you see there's some contraction? Do you see you're below the line and some reactivity? Oh yeah, I can see it now. Okay, can you just let that be okay, that there's just one over there who's scared? Can you go, "Aw, no problem"? And then, are you willing to shift? Are you willing to get open and available to learn? It's okay if you're not, that's okay. But this is a possibility. Let's see if you're willing. And if you are, let's create a very clear, measurable step that moves you in the direction of getting what you want. And that's as simple as that, over and over and over. So that is my practice in myself. Oh, check you out, Diana. You just got reactive. Take a breath. You just let it be okay. You got scared. Check and see. Are you willing to shift? And I have some willingness questions that we use. You can find those on the conscious.is resource page. Those willingness questions are like, I've memorized them all now, and they just are my guiding questions that help me see if I'm available for learning. And then let's just find some easy next step.
Yeah.
Over and over. And the question is like, how easy could this be? Because, egos like to make it hard.
And earlier you started our chat by talking about embodiment and how so much of that work is necessary in our time, and how we have this collective shadow that's starting to emerge in many of the most famous personas and celebrities out there right now. And when I think of embodiment, I think so much about the realm of the emotions and feeling. And so I'm curious for you, when you think about addressing context, what's the access point for starting to address and integrate the thoughts and the feelings that impact our context and how we deal with situations?
I love this question. I think every reactive thing that is happening in human beings is because of an unwillingness to feel some sensory experience in the body. Period. Every drama you have, every reaction you have is because something just happened in the body that you don't want to be with. You don't want to be with the clenched belly. You don't want to be with that pit in your stomach. You don't want to be with the heaviness in your chest. You don't want to be with your tight jaw. You don't want to be with that neck heating up. There's something vibrational going on you don't want to be with, so you're going to get away from the sensation and get into some victimhood to try to manage it. So I think coming back and being with these bag of bits, I like to think of it like I'm just a big bag of bits, and these bits are doing things all the time. And are you available to let the bits do what they do? Can you breathe with that? Open that? Can you welcome the pit in your stomach and that part of your throat that wants to throw up right now? Like, can you just let that open around it? Welcome it, let it be a weather pattern that mostly takes 10 to 20 seconds. Let it move through, and then take the intelligence of that sensation and move on. But that's just really we're not well educated about how to do that. And so there's so much bias toward the mind in this, like, let's think it through and talk it through, and then we'll figure it all out. And so it really is, even the questions, where are you? Like, can you feel it in your body? Not just intellect, oh, yeah, I'm below the line. It's not that. It's, oh, yeah, I can feel the contraction. I can sense what's going on in here. I can notice my breath is being held a little bit. And then can you accept it? Like, it's a sensory experience of acceptance. It's not, a lot of people go, oh, I can accept that I'm a human, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Can you get in here and have that place where your heart starts to warm a little bit with, oh, yeah, I'm just doing the best I know how. It's like my breath relaxes, the muscles relax on my bones. There's my skin pinks up. There's a sense of, oh God, yeah, acceptance. It feels so good. And then my willing to shift, you're going to feel it as whether the body will do something different or not. So that's what I'm most interested in now, is really dropping in and getting us back into being available for all these sensory experiences that give us so much intelligence too, by the way, that I think a patriarchal world that we've all been playing in, that I don't want to criticize a patriarchal world. I think, hey, human beings, you want to go into a more patriarchal world and see what that's like? Yeah, let's try it. We tried the bias, and now we're like, okay, we know what that's like. We see the high side, and now we're seeing the low side. And the low side is we got disembodied. So now we're coming back over to the other side of the polarity and going, can we have both now? And I really want to stand for that. And that's this next phase of my career is really going to emphasize this embodiment, shadow, loving it all, and waking up even more deeply to lightheartedness and brokenheartedness.
I'm excited to talk about where it's leading for you, because you're experiencing a through me moment that you wrote so beautifully about on the CLG blog not too long ago. And so I'm excited to get there. But I think that this embodiment work is so powerful and was truly transformative for me through the lens of men's work and simply sitting in circles and creating space to just welcome whatever was arising moment to moment. And I'm curious, for people who don't have a pragmatic approach to connect with their emotions, what would you advise as the first step or modality that you find is most accessible or effective for tapping people into their emotions where they truly can feel their feelings fully?
Well, I would just say, can you just start with literally thinking of yourself as a bag of bits? And just start looking around in the body right now and just going, what bits are most calling your attention right now? So like if I do it right now, I can feel like some pulling and stretching in the back of my neck. It's where I'm most aware of it. I don't need to assign an emotion to it yet. Can I just be with, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of some pressure in my bladder. Can feel that. And I'm aware of some cool on my skin, cooling on the edges of my skin, and a little bit of numbing in my fingertips. So can people just get good at noticing just what's happening is a first step. And a lot of people are like, I don't notice anything. That's pretty common. People go, I don't know anything. But the more you get good at noticing, I can notice what's happening in the bits at the tip of my nose. And I can feel like all around my ears right now and behind my kneecaps. And so there's so many places people don't put any of their attention. Like just to feel the tip of your tailbone right now, that little bony tail we have hidden in there. Like, can you just go get that? So just starting to pay attention is really helpful in starting emotional intelligence, because it starts with a sensation. And then starting to recognize there's kind of a map. It's not true for everybody all the time, but most of the time when you have sensations in the belly, you're probably scared. And most of the times when you have sensations here in the upper chest, you're probably sad. And most of the time when you're having sensations in that back, neck, jaw, shoulders, you're probably angry. And, see, is it possible? And then if it's true that you might be having those feelings, hooray, they're like best friends. Can you make them all best friends? Like, I love anger. Anger is like one of my best friends. Stop. Something here is not serving you or your people, sweetheart. Stop. Grr. Change it. Like, God, thank you so much. You make my life exquisite, anger. You dial it in so it is just mwah. Fear, hold on. Whoa. There's something you need to learn if you want to make this even a more effective experience. Pay attention. There's something you don't quite get yet. Thank you, fear. Thank you so much. My God, you are such an ally to help me learn. Pay attention. You're getting on the stage here. There's fear here going here. There's a certain kind of energetic presence you're going to want to bring. What is that? And then sadness. Hey, there's something you got to let go of. Something needs to die. Something needs to be grieved so that you can really be with it the way it is now, because you can't be with it the way it is now because you're holding on to some way it was. So you're not really here. I'm your ally to help you get here fully by letting go. Like, God, thank you, sadness. Oh, these emotions like guiding me so beautifully into helping me create something I most want for me and my people.
Just, I hear the word that comes to mind is just trust.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Just
trusting them.
trust these allies, these emotions, instead of we're going to manage these things because
Yeah.
they're not real. They're not, you know, professional. That's the old story here of, to be professional means we put those away. Now, I would argue to be professional means to check when you're in a mood that's being run by a righteous story that
I
then
was going to
has you
ask that
being
next.
reactive. That I go, yeah, not so professional to be that way. Pay attention
Hmm.
to that. And that's when you got to get revealed and go, hey, I'm getting triggered. I'm below the line. These are the facts. Here's a story. I can see I'm wanting to be right about it. So you bring presence to it so you can still be with the fact that you might be triggered and reactive, but you now have a professional skill of being able to articulate it from curiosity versus righteousness.
And you started the podcast by talking about Byron Katie and the power and impact of her influence on you. And for those who are curious about what Diana's talking about, you use the words which I love, the cognitive emotive loop, right? Is this
Yeah.
idea that our thoughts or stories are intrinsically imprinting onto our emotional state. If so, we're in fear and we're not willing to feel that fear will then imprint onto a thought and amplify it. And so if that thought is the business is going to collapse, we're not going to meet Q2 earnings, then that's just going to go around and then impact the fear. And around we go until we're willing to just sit in it and be with whatever's there. And Byron Katie has this beautiful framework called The Work, which is a powerful and very practical 5-question framework to inspect our thoughts that are creating suffering, reactivity, emotional experiences. And you said one thing that I love, that so much of you just started and really emphasizing the connection to the physical sensations, and that idea of, even when I was beginning to learn Tantra, this woman, Barbara Carrellis, she has this great saying. It just says, where our attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I had always kind of thought about it through this lens that, like, she would have you focus on your pinky finger. And then I had this visual in my mind of energy flowing to my pinky. And as you were talking about it, I was like, oh, that's not actually it. It's that there is just energy there that I'm not present to.
Yeah.
And as I bring my awareness to it, the energy is moving. And
Yeah.
that, like, we're just these energetic beings. And so even as you talked about it, it was like, if you were to sit with any emotion and the feeling that it conjures, where our attention goes, energy flows simply by bringing the awareness to it.
Yep.
It was a beautiful little reframe there, which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. So a cognitive emotive loop I saw the other day, I was talking to a client and I said, what's something that, like, you're still triggered about from the past that recirculates? And he goes, oh, I got a scene I can tell you about, which is there was a group of us and we were on a offsite. And at one point the guy goes, hey, I just want to let you guys know I want to be done by 4. I'm going to play golf. And he goes, I was so mad. Like, what do you mean? We got stuff to do. What do you mean you're going to go play golf? Like, you can't do that. And he goes, I've been mad about that ever since. And I still think of that guy. And I still think, like, what a jerk. And he's been circulating this and upsetting himself for years about it. So we had to go in and look at, like, oh, you want to be right. He shouldn't have gone to play golf. And you, as long as you want to be right, you then get angry in this righteous anger. And then that thought created the anger, and then the anger fuels the thought. And that's what a cognitive emotive loop is. And so most people don't know how much they're in cognitive emotive loops, and you can't fix a cognitive emotive loop by feeling more. And I think a lot of people will do this. Like, they'll have somebody go, oh, tell me more about, I'm upset because she said that thing about me, and, oh, let's feel your feelings about that. But no, let's not feel your feelings about it, because let's question the mind first. Because if you don't question the mind, the feeling's just going to recycle. And that is a big cognitive emotive loops is a really big issue.
Say it 10 times fast.
Right? Yeah, and we wrote an article about cognitive emotive loop. That's, if you Google it, I think it's one of the few articles out there, but you can learn more about it. And I think it's a super helpful thing for people to pay attention to.
Yeah, very, very much is. Um, so I'd love to bridge into the territory of to me, by me, as me, through me.
Hmm.
And you wrote about it, so I can say that you recently made the decision to step away from the Conscious Leadership Group.
Yeah.
And in Jim's blog post, it opened up by saying that we are committed to through me leadership, and one of those moments is happening right now. And what I would love for you to do is to explain those different context or mindsets to us. And then I'd love to ask a few questions about when that through me message really started to come to you. But how do you think of to me, by me?
Okay, this is a model we originally got from Michael Beckwith. And he had it more as a spiritual model, and we took it into making it a leadership model. And the idea is that in any given moment, we're in one of these states. And so start with life is happening to me. I'm in a victimhood state. I feel at the effect of, and I am reactive because of something of these conditions. Now, I can be in a to me state and be happy. I'm happy, but it's happening to me because I got a raise and my wife kissed me and my kid's doing well in school. And so I'm happy, but it's all conditional. And underneath it, there's nervousness that if those things go away, it's going to happen to me. I will be suffering. So big part of the world spends a big part of their time in life is happening to me. Now, if you really want to take radical responsibility, you come over to life is happening by me, and I realize I'm the creator of this thing, and I get to have say about how much suffering I want to experience inside and around me. And I start to own it's my movie, and I direct and produce it, and I have a lot more power than I ever imagined. Now, only that of which I have control. There are many things in which I don't have control of, and we have to be including that in the by me conversation. And then by me is fun because I really get to feel the me, but it's still an egoic me that's all about what do I want. If I get willing to be non-attached to that and go, hey, that was really fun game to really make it all about what do I want, but I kind of got, I got some pretty good skills around that now. What's the next game? I think the next game is, hey, what if I start creating space to allow some awareness that's greater than myself to start dancing with me and ask, how does life want to move and express itself through me? And I start getting much more service oriented in that I'm really here to care for the well-being of the whole and myself. And I want to dance with life. And I want to be open to things maybe I wasn't open to before. And so that's a fabulous experience to have. And then another possibility is life is happening as me, where there is not a lot of me left. It is just a hint of me hanging out here. And I'm really looking through the eyes of this one, really from some clear awareness, moving around in the world and not having an experience of separation, but really having a direct experience of oneness. So most of us get moments of that in a psychedelic experience, or maybe in a religious experience, or holding a baby, or being in a special place in nature. And those moments are not as easy to grab and manage. But to me, by me, through me, easy to pop in and out of if you're willing to take responsibility and let go of attachments. So sometime last spring, I started to have this thought like life wants to have me move out of CLG. And my head is like, are you crazy? That seems insane. Like
Do you
you're
remember the
just,
moment, like where you were, like when it first crept in?
it wasn't a moment I think I didn't have. I don't think I had the courage to see it as a moment.
Mm.
It started to leak in like, hey,
Mm.
might be time, just little gentle little awarenesses. And then I said, okay, I think I'm going to take a sabbatical here. And so I took a sabbatical, and then in the sabbatical, it was like, oh yeah, come on, Diana, you gotta have courage here to really let go. And so then I did, and it was a wild ride to let go, and got really flat for about 6 months, and was like, am I gonna die? What's happening here? What's going on? It was just a very unfamiliar place to hang out. And just even only in the last couple of weeks, some new wave is catching me. It's not like I'm catching a wave. I feel like a wave is catching me, and now the wave and I are in a dance and going, where are we going next? And what's going to happen? And in a very non-attached way, being in a dance in which I want to create a win for all. Life wins and I win. And me and life are one and the same on one level, and we're playing a game of separation on another level, and that's fun. I want to honor both and see what is it that wants to happen in and through me that really is of service, that love wants, and would really be a delight for me as well. And that's what I'm up to, is exploring that now.
And when you say, what does love want, that theme has come up many times in our calls as this deeper presence that is accessible, where we can choose from, we can listen from. I'm just curious for you, what do you mean when you say that, coming from love? What is that for you? How do you access it? Like, what is your relationship with that force? What does it mean to you, if you were to make it real for the viewers, the listeners?
I don't know if this would be helpful, but I'm going to try it. If I brought to you right now a plate and a cup, both made out of pottery, and I said, what do you see? Most people will say, I see a plate and a cup. And it'll look like separation. It'll look like two things. But there is a possibility you could look again and say, oh, there's one thing, clay. There's clay there, and all of it is clay, just molding itself into different parts. And there's a different way you get to experience life if you're with the clay versus with the cup and the bowl. And so for me, I like tuning into being part of the clay. That it's all clay. I was just hearing something the other day, like we're all made up of the same elements that the stars are made up of. And it's all the same elemental experience going on. And like, what if I just start to be with that whole thing that's one thing and access the wisdom and intelligence of that one thing, whatever you want to call it. But when I sit and let myself be in relationship to that, like just even right now, my spine's tingling, my cells are enlivening, and there's like it's a big, beautiful, vast space, place, infinite access to all kinds of things that I don't even know. I will never know, but I'm available to learn with that awareness.
And what about it do you trust?
I used to practice a lot in the beginning, like, sorry, I'm going to take a little drink.
Go for it.
I used to listen for, it's great because I was just thinking, what's a whole body yes? So I started practicing in little ways, just like looking at a menu and going, what really is a whole body yes? Not just to my taste buds, but to my whole aliveness. What's the meal that would serve that? And then I would try it and I'd go, wow, that was really fabulous. I could trust that. And then I'd try it again. Like, what's the whole body yes to how I drive home today from my location? There's 3 different options. And I just see what did life say? And I practiced on little things first. And then I started to build a muscle for, wow, when I really tune into what's a whole body yes, I get guided. And that whole body yes is accessing the wisdom of my instinctual intelligence, my body intelligence, my emotional intelligence, my intellectual intelligence at the very least. Could be also my spiritual intelligence. And I'm using these intelligences to guide me around. So I just started practicing with things that didn't make a big difference. And then I really liked the results. So I just kept practicing and practicing. And so whole body yes became my guiding way. And I was just thinking about it because I just drank my chai, and as I was drinking, I was like, oh, that is a whole body yes. Everything about the way I have created that cup of chai is just, and I have like a yes and no kind of a feeling inside. And I love the practice of learning your whole body yes. And if you go to wholebodyyes.com, you can learn all about that concept.
And that's your website, Whole Body Yes?
It's my domain that I connected to a web page I made over at the Conscious Leadership Group.
Oh, cool. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, you'll see me with Tim Ferriss, and where I guide him into finding what it feels like to have a whole body yes versus a no. And then I go into all kinds of content on that page of becoming much more masterful at that. And whole body yes is all in service of full aliveness. And that's what I'm about. I'm about full aliveness, and I think full aliveness is the greatest way to express my gratitude for being able to exist. Is I will be here in my full aliveness in devotion to this beautiful opportunity I have been given. And I'm interested in hanging out with people for whom full aliveness is what matters most to them too. And which is honestly one of the big reasons why I wanted to work with you, Andrew, is like I really heard like you're willing to put a lot at risk for full aliveness. And that's what interests me, is letting go of attachments for that aliveness is, I think, the most fun game in town.
Well, as we move towards a close, I told you this on a call recently, and it almost brought me to tears as I realized it. But I was getting ready to get on one of our sessions, and I was thinking about our relationship. And what I was thinking is that you have so much wisdom and tools and frameworks that are so pragmatic and so useful. And I've learned so much, I've grown so much because of them. And what I shared with you and what I became present to was that one of the biggest things that I get from our relationship and our time together is not what you share in the form of a tool or words, but it is just the connection to you and your way of living, of experiencing and meeting life and the humans in it. And that so much of my own experience is just enhanced because of knowing that you exist, because of feeling that you exist. And that like that imprint is just in itself creating possibilities for me of how you can live, how you can meet life, not absent of reactivity, but in like the consummate response to it when it emerges. And it just helped me to, for myself, say like, oh, like I can continue to learn tools and frameworks and write and speak and coach and get really masterful at these things. But also like, if I just commit to living fully, like fully receiving the gift of my life, that maybe I could have the same impact because I felt that from you. And that was so liberating and so fun, and just tapped me into a whole new pathway of coaching and teaching that, yeah, the tools, the frameworks, they're helpful, but that just living fully like really can be an act of service. And I am just in deep gratitude for you and our time together and your love and your care. You even just like fundamentally transformed one of our mutual friends' lives recently that we were cheering about in the call. So I'm just incredibly grateful that you exist and that I've had the opportunity to work together. So thank you so much. And for anyone who is here, maybe we can close it on this. For anyone who's curious about finding that way of living, that full aliveness, gratitude for the existence of being here, where should they go? What should they do?
Oh my goodness, there's so many paths back to love, And you all know, moment to moment, what works. And you'll know because you like that there's something that felt a little more at home. And I would just say, keep taking steps that feel a little more like you're coming home, and trust yourself. I really do believe we are profoundly intelligent designs, each of us equally. and that we're part of a very intelligent design. And I don't think it screws us over. I think it takes good care of us, and our job is just to articulate, I want to come back to presence and love and aliveness, and let's go. So that's, I don't know, but I trust you do.
Well, with that, Diana Chapman, thank you for joining us today. For anyone who wants to connect with you and your work, what are the best places to find you? Anything that you want to share with the people?
Yeah, I would just say, I don't know exactly where I'm going next. I'm in this new iteration. So best way to find out what my offerings will be is to get on dianachapman.com and just sign up for my newsletter. And then as things become known, you'll hear about them.
And if I were to be prescriptive, I would say if you are in a position of leadership in a company or want to create a culture with a common language for the conscious, empowered response to life and conflict and everything in between, the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership is my favorite, most gifted book on leadership. It's incredibly powerful. And at CLG, they've created this rich repository of resources and frameworks and handouts that you really could go and spend an entire year just diving into these things. And so it's so powerful, and it really is such a gift what you've created. And so thank you again. We'll add all this into the show notes. But
Yeah,
I
and
love
be
you.
on the lookout. Be on the lookout for the new book we're writing called No Drama Teams. And it will be out in the next year or two. We'll see. But it's going to be a really good playbook on how to really play together using these models. So
Well, I love you, Diana Chapman. Thank you for
I
the
love
time.
you so much, Andrew Horn. Thanks for dancing with me through life. It's a great joy, and I want you to know that it touches me greatly how you are bringing your own expression of presence out into the world, and I'm very invested in that. And thank you for your work. It warms my heart, and
Thanks, Diana.
especially for all those beautiful men who say yes to wanting to come back home with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Deeply received. All right, y'all. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.